One of my favorite tricks with this dashboard is with the switch of a button, it switches from that 13-month trend line right over to a year-over-year analysis. So I can actually see year-to-date 22, we've closed 649 units, but year-to-date 2021, the same time period through May, we actually closed 844. So our closed volume is down 17.8%. And I can look at that across all of the different metrics through here. Oops, this is a little bugaboo here that I'm going to need to take as a note. Give me 1 second. That little second thing should go on. Whoops. Hang on. So hang on. HCAR review year-to-date bug. If you see any graphic anomalies like that, that's all in me. I made a mistake. All right. So the next cool thing about all our dashboards is we have this thing called time travel. I can actually roll backward to December 2021, and it'll actually give me that year-over-year analysis comparing all of 2021 to all of 20. So the ability to switch back and forth, I can recreate this for what this dashboard would have looked like a year ago. Whatever question you come up with, there's a lot of flexibility to come up with an answer. So let's put this market review away, and we're going to pop over, and I'm going to skip over weekly. That's going to make sense in a couple minutes. We're going to go over to market insights. So if you look at our banner here, you see that this one switched over to member dashboards. These are meant for you to use only as an agent and only as an access to MLS, because they have so much access to raw listing data and so much detailed filters. We always believe that you, the agent, should have more powerful tools than the general public. So we're going to let this dashboard load here for a minute. Generally, things load about sub-second time. That's our UI target. I don't know why it's having problems with me this morning. I think it decided I'm doing a training session and it wants to make things a little more difficult for me. So anyways, market insights is the kitchen sink dashboard of Domus. This is where you're going to be spending 70–80% of your time, because all the answers are in here. All of the dashboards are built from the same data. So whether or not you look at the data through infographic or you look at it through review, they're all going to give the same answers. When you don't get the same answers, 99 times out of 100 is because the filter selection is slightly different. So let's talk a little bit more about here. What we're looking at is the sales price, and I can peek and look at our filters. We're just looking at single family across all of the geographies and all of our slider filters. We'll talk more about that in a minute. I just wanted to show that we're talking about the whole market. And what we're seeing here is a 10-year line chart going all the way back to 2012. And even though the label down here says January 2022, if you mouse over the data point, it'll actually show you that it means May. This is just a chart not having enough room to draw all its labels, and it's trying to automatically figure it all out. But look at your market here for a second. Things were relatively stable, running 200 to 250 up until the beginning of 2020. The world went completely haywire. Everybody decided they wanted to leave the city and move out to the country, and boom, there goes the demand for your product as you guys are sitting out there. It's a beautiful area. I actually grew up in Virginia. I live out in Reno, Nevada now. It's about 9 a.m. my time. I grew up in Virginia, spent time out. I did college in Charlottesville and up through the hills over there. You guys are literally living in one of the most beautiful parts of the country, and I promise not to tell everyone that. So your secret's safe. Anyways, so what we're looking at, let's go ahead and pick a little bit on units closed. So here's the volume of closed sales over time, and we can see this big 2020 spike, and then we've kind of returned to a little bit of normalcy. But let's interact with this a little bit more. I'm going to add in condo, townhouse. Let's just add them all in. I've got my select all button. And what I can do is I can also take these buttons down here and compare the different values against each other. So I can see that single family, this red line, is my highest use. Subdivision land has an awful lot of volume. Condo townhouse has a little bit less, and then you can dig down and start to see some of these smaller numbers. The same thing by county. I can click over here and see where the volume of sales is across county and everything else. So everything we look at, I can do comparison races. I'm not going to click on the city button because we have an awful lot of values here. The idea is if you've got a client who lives in city 1, but they want to move to city 2 or 3, or you're working with a buyer and they want to move to one to a couple of different cities, then you can select those and just say, hey, here's how your 3 cities compare against each other. So we're going to switch that out, go to a single line. I'm going to pop back over here. I'm going to turn on my filters for a moment. I'm going to turn on my filters for a moment. Come on, guys. I'm going to hit this reset button just so it turns around right to I started for this default value there. So let's keep talking about the data a little bit more. Anytime I'm looking at a chart, I can look at my time period of by month. I can also click a button and do a quarterly analysis, and I can click a button and do an annual analysis. And when I do an annual analysis, it's now going to ask me if I want to do year to date or annualized. Generally, for counting numbers like the number of units sold, I want to do a year to date analysis. But for measure of location parameters like price, I want to compare the whole year versus the whole year versus everything I have this year, and I'd hit an annualized button. So you've got a lot of power to aggregate that data as you go through and see it in those different ways. So we closed 160 units of single family in May of 2022. I can click on this price distribution and we can see how those 160 units split across different prices. So the middle of my market, actually, you guys have a fairly wide band. That's a little bit unusual. So usually these kind of bunch up towards the middle and have a much longer tail. It's neither good or bad. It's just how big your market is. I can see that we closed 8 units over $1.5 million. Here is my favorite trick of Domus. I'm just going to double click on this bar once, and the system is actually going to drill in and show me those 8 listings from the MLS that met that criteria. So I can now say, wow, that was really interesting. I can pull up the ID or the address and now go back to MLS, look it up, and explore a little bit more. So that's true on any data point. So again, most everything you look at, if you double click, you can go ahead and see that particular data. So let's talk a little bit more about the metrics that we have available. I kind of jumped right into closed sales to show you how you can interact with the time. Oh, there's one other thing I can do. If I'm not interested in a full 10-year history, I'm having a conversation with a client about what's happened since 2020. I'm just going to drag my mouse button across and I can zoom in and get a more detailed view of that right here. So I can see exactly the change. Hey, here's where we spiked in 2020. We kind of found our footing in 21. And then here's where we are up to today. So I can also zoom in on any of these charts. It's a neat little feature. So let's talk about our metrics a little bit. I'm going to walk through these one by one. So most of these are going to be pretty straightforward. And then a couple of them are a little more subtle. So closed sales is just the number of units matching the criteria that settled. Sales price is that settled price. Sold dollar per square foot is exactly what it looks like. It's how much did it close for and what was the living area of that property. That's the metric that if we're looking at land only, it's going to switch around and show us dollar per acre because that makes sense for land and dollar per foot doesn't. So percent of list price received. This is a very common industry metric. It is also a very slow moving metric. Us as insiders, we know the difference between 94, 93, and 95% versus 100.6 is a really dramatically different market. But on the surface, it doesn't sound like that. So, be a little sensitive to your clients and understand that that metric is telling you a little something. Days on market. This is the median days on market for all the listings that made it through escrow and went to closing. This is aligned to what you're going to look at out of MLS. And we can see over the last couple of years, we can see two things out of here. Number one, we can see that the market's getting tighter and moving faster. And we know if it takes, I don't know, on average about a month in escrow, that 40 DUM means that things are actually getting under contract probably in around a week or so. And we can also see that you guys are in a highly seasonal market. So things slow down in the winter and they pick up again in the summer. And that's what we're seeing in the market activity right here. Sold dollar volume is just the sum of all of those closing prices. It's just aggregating the total dollar amount of business that we're moving through right there. And you can see you guys did nearly $100 million worth of business in May. So I'm going to spend a lot of time here talking about active inventory for several reasons. The first is active inventory as a statistic is something that's hard for a lot of systems to go calculate. MLS and IDX and all those type systems tell you what's the status of things right now. Domus is able to tell you what was the status of things a couple years ago. And when we look at this picture, we can see that we had a lot of inventory back in 15. The market was getting tighter and tighter. Things fell apart in 2020. And so this is kind of what I want to mention. Even though all the stories in the media, and we look at this number of, gosh, we're up 30% in inventory from the prior month. Even though this is a big jump in number of, I'm sorry, my words are stumbling over there. Even though this is a big jump in inventory compared to where we've been the last couple months, this visually demonstrates just how far away we are from the market we've all been used to. So it's anybody's guess where this line is going in the future, how quickly it's going to go up. I think we all have an idea that with prices and earnings and mortgage rates, we're not expecting this line to go down, but this puts in context where we've been historically. I also want to talk a little bit about using this number in conjunction with our filters. So we looked a little bit earlier, we saw that median price jumping up from, what were we, about 200, 250 or so, under 200. And then in the last couple of years, prices have gotten high. What that also means is first-time home buyers are having a much harder time finding a quality home. We can demonstrate this by sliding our price range filter down to, say, 160. The active inventory chart is going to redraw behind the scenes. A couple of years ago, we had a couple hundred homes to choose from. And as inventory has gotten tighter and as prices have increased, we only have 23 single family listings for these people to choose from. That is just a super challenging environment. And the reason I kind of went in a little bit extra segue here, you guys as agents and consultants to your clients can use these stats to be the bearer of bad news so that you can align yourself against the market and work in your in the benefit of your client. You can use us as the bad guy. I'm a tool in a technology. I live out in Reno. I don't care. Blame it all on me. But you can use this to say, look, here's the problem that you and I are aligned against. And quite frankly, this is true across the entire country right now. First-time home buyer inventory has gotten absolutely devastated. And what the statistics don't tell you is back here, some of these homes would be very cute, very nice, livable little places. Now the place listings that are available in this price range, they're getting older, they're needing a lot of work, they're getting rougher. The quality of product, even within the same price band, has absolutely changed over time. So we're going to go ahead and slide that one back out. A quick note about the filters here. You can see that I'm able to adjust the upper and lower bound of anything that I'm looking at. Even though these numbers say 1,004,000 square feet and 100 acres of land, When the plus sign pops up, it means it's including everything. We couldn't make this slider extend too far without making it hard to use. So we gave a reasonable range right here and the little plus sign to remind you of it. So let's go back and keep talking about metrics. The month supply of inventory, or the absorption rate, is that end of month active inventory divided by your sales volume. And we as realtors know, hey, this is the amount of time it's going to take to sell through our inventory. And realtors as a whole use this to decide whether or not we're in a buyer's market or a seller's market. A couple of other things I look at for that. Anyways, you can see that back in 2020, your market dropped deeply into a seller's market, and you have about 2.3 months of inventory right now. What I think is really interesting looking at this chart, you are the highest MSI of virtually every client that we work with in Domus. We have a lot of clients that are at half a month of inventory, and most of the country is less than 1 month of inventory. So when we talk about the crazy market and the crazy world, what I'm seeing when I show you this is you guys are dramatically less crazy than the rest of the country. And that in itself is a crazy thought. So let's keep talking a little bit. New pending sales. This is another one that I'm watching super closely. This is just the number of new contracts that have been written and accepted and have remained as accepted contracts. So in May, we wrote 176 contracts. I'm going to be watching this number like a hawk going forward, because as people's rate lots expire, as their mortgage numbers go up, as they continually be challenged by income and increasing price, I think we're already feeling that buyers feel like they're at the top of the market and they might sit on the sidelines for a little while. There's a lot of sellers coming into the market feeling like they should have been on the market last fall but don't want to miss out. So anyways, I'm going to be watching this contract writing activity and watch where it falls off. What I'm hearing from other markets across the country is contracts are still being written. They're still being written very quickly, but the quality of those contracts is changing dramatically. So before, you might have been new on Friday, had an open house on Saturday, and said, final and best offers by Monday afternoon. We're making a decision Tuesday. And you would get 6 cash offers with a waived contingency. Now you're not saying that as much anymore. You're getting 2 contingent offers and you need a full inspection to go through with it. So even though you're still getting that contract and it's being accepted, the quality of those is dropping across the country. That's an important segue to remember that in statistics, we're always looking in the rear view mirror. And I'm able to tell you, the statistics is able to tell you what has already happened on the MLS. But I want you guys to really listen to your clients, listen to your buyers, listen to your sellers, and get that 0 time delay information in the market. What are people saying? And then go back to the statistics and validate that those feelings are realizing themselves in the market. There is a delay on what you're going to feel in the market and when it realizes itself. Everybody who's going to closing now went under contract 1 escrow period ago and was shopping for months before that. So statistics is slower than what happens in the real world. So let's go in and look at that number of new listings. We're just going to walk through all these. I'm spending the majority of time here in market insights because everything else we do is kind of a derivative of that. And it also represents where I spend the time looking at the market. So sure enough, we're not having dramatically unusual new listing behavior. It's a very seasonal market. It's very much in line with the last many years. Original list price is really interesting. This is actually one of my favorite metrics, and most people don't look for it. I call this seller optimism. So I'm watching original list price to make sure that, let me back up. The go-to-market price in a new listing is the culmination of everything that you're looking at when you talk to your seller. Like, let's run those AVMs. Let's look at the different price estimates. Let's look at comps. How are you guys feeling about the economy? You put all that together and come out with your first go-to-market price. What I see here is there's already been a little dip from 525 in April. Let's expand this a little bit and we'll dig in a little deeper. From 525 in April down to 499 in May. Is this just noise in a small sample set or data? Or does this actually represent a trend where your sellers are saying as a group, hey, you know what? It's really important for me to sell this listing. I've got a lot of equity in here. Let's just back off that top a little bit. I want to make sure I get a good offer in the next couple of weeks. If this original list price does keep pulling back over the next couple months, that means we know that we've bounced off the top of the market. So percent distress, this is any new listing that goes on market in any form of short or REO type category. This is very much a lagging market. Before we get to that point, people have been behind on payments. They've had adjustment programs. They've had letters. So this is very much a trailing indicator of the market. And when we see this start to dip up, we already know that the market has shifted. This is answering how bad and how much. The number of unsold listings. This one's kind of interesting. Less from a statistical perspective. These are all the listings that have gone to the market in some form of expired or withdrawn status. They made it to the end of their listing but didn't get an offer. This is neat for prospecting. So I'm just going to double click right here. I can see all 26 listings that terminated without being sold. If I were an ambitious agent, I would get on the phone and call these people and say, hey, I saw that listing didn't come to fruition. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience? If the sellers are still interested in selling their property, that might be an interesting opportunity for you to go ahead and go out and talk to them. And the last, okay, so this is actually one of my favorite new metrics. We just added these last two over the winter. Percent of closed metrics above list price. When you go to closing, did the closing price have to settle above that last ask price? So, you know, they're asking 200,000. Did the buyer feel like they needed to go to 220 or 210 or 250 in order to get that contract accepted? This is the percentage of those listings that people felt they needed to overbid. Now, earlier when I showed that percentage of ask price received, I said it was a very slow moving metric, very subtle. I like this one better because you can actually see this huge dramatic shift. You know, we've been running historically about 5% of the listings needed to overbid. And now we've screamed up to 43% of the listings that closed in May needed to be overbid. And again, and I know this sounds silly, this is the lower end of what we're seeing across the country. We monitor a market in California. They had 75% of their closed listings had to offer above that last ask price in order to go to closing. So this shows you the relative increase in the behavior in your market. And obviously, when this metric pulls back, we know that sellers are starting to be a lot more cautious. And then the last one, whether or not this is useful in your conversations, I don't know. This metric hasn't changed over time. This is what did the sellers actually go to closing with? How many of them are cash offers? In some markets, we start to see this metric change here and there. This doesn't appear to be a big driver. So again, I've spent the majority of my time here in Market Insights. If you had to pick one dashboard that you want to learn thoroughly, this is going to be the one that has all the bells and whistles. It's also the most complex. So we skipped over the weekly dashboard, and let me pull that one up and show you why. The weekly dashboard is just a derivative of the monthly dashboard, but it's built on a weekly calendar. So sometimes we can't wait around to the end of the month. We're not going to, let me back up. Domus publishes stats for the prior month when that month is completed. So as we get deeper into a month, we're going to wait a little bit to see how the last month did. So we're sitting on June 9th right now. We're looking at May data. When we make it to June 25th, we're still looking at May data, But when we make it to July 1st, the morning of July 1st, then the dashboard will roll and show us everything that was happening in June behavior. The weekly dashboard exists so we can get a little bit sooner information. So we're built in a Saturday to Sunday calendar, and I can look and see everything that's been going on in about the last year. So this is really important to monitor what's going on intra-month. And if you're working actively with a buyer or a seller, you can give that weekly touch point to what the market's doing. So I slid down here to active inventory and see that we bottomed out at 200 units, which is just crazy. But week by week by week, we are still climbing. And even into June, that number is still climbing up there. The two others that I wanted to look at were the number of contracts being written. And we saw this little bobble at the end of May. But that first week in June, we're back up to a reasonable amount of contracts. So in stats, you're kind of always looking at it with the stink eye that says, are you a trend or are you an anomaly? And that's actually a good way to talk about that for you guys with High Country. When you're working with the filters and working with the stats, I want you to be very aware of the number of listings you're interrogating, because as you move from 100 to 50 to 20, you're introducing a lot of variance and introducing a lot of noise. And those metrics like the median close price of last month, or even some of our account numbers, can start to get very, very noisy. So when you're looking at 3 and 5 listings, there's virtually no statistical conclusion you can draw other than you're looking at 3 or 5 listings. So because you're in a smaller market, I want you guys to be very sensitive about over specifying your filters and getting into small numbers. So now we're off in the rambling part of what I do here. In search, I think being very specific in your filters is super important. I use myself as an example. I have a 2-car garage right now. It's too small for me. I really want a 4-car garage in my next home. If you as an agent take me to a showing of a place that has a 2-car garage, you're a really bad agent, because I will never purchase that property. I don't care. I'm over it. But for statistics, you want to include that 2-car garage because it's representative of the market, and you get the power of that additional data to help draw your trend lines and draw your behavior. So the takeaway is search should be very, very specific related to what your clients are actually looking at purchasing. Stats should be very, very inclusive, so you can put together all of that data and draw a very comprehensive and as stable as possible a trend line. That is the subtle difference between search and stats. Even though they both look like filters, the use of that same tool is very, very different. All right, back to weekly trends. There's my little segue on sizes. So we can pop back down here. Let's look at that original list price. Remember we said we saw that pulling back a little bit? Well, sure enough, we can see this pulling back a little bit towards the end of May, but our behavior for the handful of new listings in June brought that number back up again. Maybe that wasn't a trade. Let's pop over and how many listings was that made up of? Sure enough, we had 69 new listings in that week, so it's a reasonable number. Again, that's teasing out the difference between noise and actual trends. So be cautious is kind of the advice there. So let me back out of this a little bit. Those are our traditional market stats dashboards. It's trend lines, it's distributions, it's filters, it's talking about the average and the count and the median and all this other type stuff and where this market's going. We have one more dashboard that breaks that mold. And this dashboard is, it's not an AVM, it's not a CMA, but what it is it's a view into how a particular market is pricing. So I know that the association's based in Boone, so we're going to go ahead and pick on Boone here right now. And this is the first dashboard that's making me pick actual things before I go into it. It's making me pick filter selections, and we'll understand why here in a moment. This is a simple scatter plot. Every dot on the chart represents a particular listing. So we're looking at Boone right now, and we see that the median price was $485. The median dollar per square foot was $258, and we're based on 145 total listings. Now, across the horizontal axis is just the price of that listing, and across the vertical axis is the dollar per square foot as a proxy for luxury. All things being the same, a higher dollar per square foot will have better landscaping, a nicer lot. It'll have granite countertops. It'll be newer. All those things that make the same stats a little bit nicer. Anyways, this median sales price of $485 is this vertical black bar. That means half the listings are below it to the left, half the listings are to the right. This horizontal bar at $285 is that dollar per square foot. Half the listings are below it, half are above. A subtle thing right here, we are looking at all the statuses of closed, pending, and active within the last month. The market is defined by the closed listings, even though we have pendings and actives included. You don't get to drive the economy until you've actually come to an agreement between buyer and seller. Now, what we're looking at is we have now separated the market into 4 different quadrants. This bottom left quadrant down here, these are below market priced listings. There are below dollar per square foot listings. In Boone, this is going to be a more simple listing. I can go ahead and click on this number right here at 142 at $91 a foot. I see that it's 379 North Pine Run. I can pull that up in MLS if I want to go look at it. The message here is, if you're working with a buyer who says, hey, you know, I'm watching my pennies, but I'm really pretty good at swinging a hammer and I want to fix something up and grow into the market, this is where you grow into the market. The market is based around here. Statisticians call this regression to the mean. And this growth will be that natural tendency to move up and around your neighbors. The exact opposite of this is this upper right quadrant, where we both have a high price and a high dollar per square foot. These are the best of the best. If I click on this one listing I'm looking at, 2.5 million at $592 a foot, 530 Howard's Knob Road. I'm expecting this to be an incredibly nice property, really stand out. That's fine. And you can say to your seller, hey, look, you are one of the best in the best. It's going to take us a little while to go ahead and get a qualified offer. What I like about this dashboard is, let's suppose you're working with a seller who says he's got a 2,000 square foot property that he thinks he wants to sell for $1 million. And you can plug these numbers into Domus. These light blue lines are going to come out from the side and say, hey, you know what? You're at the 77th percentile of price. You're at the 90th percentile of dollar per square foot. Let's go ahead and click on your economic nearest neighbor, this 895 at 523, and see that it's 1525 Highway 421. I can pull that up in MLS. We can look through the pictures and we can say, okay, seller, that looks like a really nice property. Are we realistic with our go-to-market price, or should we look at some other comps and maybe be a little bit more competitive when we decide to go out in that market there? This is a visual representation of the price elasticity inside a market. Your buyers are always asking, hey, you know what? If I spend a little bit more, am I going to get that much nicer a property? Or am I overpaying for what I'm looking at? And your sellers are always asking, how much can I get for this? Can I remain competitive? Are there other listings out there priced near me that I really need to be aware of? And it's not just the price. It's not just the dollar per square foot. This puts both of those two dimensions together and puts it in one place. This is one of my favorite dashboards. Once you work with it a couple of times, you look into it and go, okay, this is cool. We have a client who prints one of these out for every open house they go to with a client. But now I'm getting into use case training. So I am going to switch my screen sharing. I only got about 10 minutes left here, so I want to be really respectful of everyone's time. So hang on, that's my calendar. Let me put this window away. I'm going to put this up in the background. We're going to, oh, I did that too early. We're going to go to screen share and use case scenarios. All right. So I've talked a lot about what the dashboard is, how to use them and the different stats and what they mean. I want to spend the last 10 minutes talking about some ideas I've heard of other people using them. So when you think about which dashboard should I use, information is delivered in chunks. There's a theory called bite snack meal, where you decide if you want to have a 30-second sentence, a 5-minute conversation, or maybe sit down for an hour and roll up your sleeves. So the dashboards follow themselves from the very simple infographics, the medium-sized market review, and then these more complex monthly and pricing dashboards. And the other thing I'm going to tell you is use what you're comfortable with. There's not a general right answer. There's a right answer for you. And if you are most comfortable with market review, or you love posting infographic on Snapchat, go for it. That's what's going to make you effective. Realtors are required. This is what I say. I'm sorry if I'm opposing. Realtors have to have knowledge that I call a mile wide and a foot deep. It's our job at Domus to make the market stats easier for you to get to, so that can be one of the tools in your tool belt. You guys need to know a lot of stuff. We're just trying to make this a little bit easier. So the dashboard you should use, it's the one you're comfortable with and the one that your client is going to consume that information on. So when people ask, what's the market doing? They're basically just asking a super simple question. They're making small talk. Is it up? Is it down? Is it cooling? And look at those metrics of what's the price? What's the days on market? What's that percent over closed? And go back to whatever dashboard you're comfortable with. But people are just looking for very simple answers. People are always curious about real estate. When you talk about, now you're getting into that mid-grade conversation, is it a buyer's or a seller's market? The NAR definition is absorption rate between 5 and 7 months, but I would encourage you to think a little bit more dynamically about that. And the 3 metrics that I look at are inventory. That's by far the number one. That effect it has on negotiating power, days on market, and price. So in a buyer's market, let's go to the seller's market that we're in right now. In a seller's market like we've been in, inventory is low. Buyers have no negotiating power. That's changing currently, but last couple of years, if you don't make an offer on Saturday, it's going to sell to somebody else. Buyers have nothing. Days on market, things go through super fast. And in order to get those contracts accepted, the price is just going up and up and up. The buyer's market is the opposite. I don't even remember what a buyer's market feels like. So inventory will be higher. Buyers can be very picky about those offers. You know what? Replace that fridge. Please fix this flooring over here. And I really want the rose garden spruced up a little bit. And things are going to take longer on market, and sellers are going to be accepting prices that make them a little uncomfortable. So we talked a little bit. I showed you the example. Think about first-time home buyers, where you narrow down that price structure. You narrow down some of the product mix of price and square footage, and then you can look at what's actually they're experiencing right there and go to inventory charts or anything else on these buy price bands or anything else. So play with that price filter in order to get that single family. On the other end of the spectrum, your luxury sellers are going to have an incredibly different experience. Their sales rate is going to be much slower. Their absorption rate is going to be much higher. And when you go to a pitch prezo and you're saying, you know, hey, you're at the top of the market, you've got a beautiful home, the impact that's going to have in our relationship, as supported by the statistics, is it's going to take us longer to find a qualified buyer. And even though that sounds like bad news on the surface, what you're doing is differentiating yourself as an expert. And those luxury sellers are really going to appreciate that data-driven truth and have more confidence in you and your ability to execute your function. Again, we talked a little bit about this in training. Use those buy filters to say, let me compare area 1, 2, and 3 against each other. We talked about it with the trend lines. Those also hold true with price distributions. We have a screenshot in there. So all of those tools go across all of the capabilities. This pricing dashboard we talked about, there is no single answer on how to determine a price or whether or not I should accept a particular offer. Use all the tools you have in your arsenal. Use the AVMs, look at recent sales, make a comp, and bring pricing insights into that discussion to talk about that localized elasticity against you. That is the ultimate decision. What should I price? Should I accept this price? This is another one of those really important tools you have in that toolbox for you. So if we think about marketing communication, we can do that same thing. A client gave us a tip that when he does his check-in calls with his clients, he will pull up Domus Analytics, click on a filter or two, have a couple of numbers fresh in his head, and when he's making that phone call, he has that knowledge and expertise and say, hey, by the way, you know what? I saw that price was up about 6% at, $6.75 out in your market. And it's rolling off his tongue so smoothly, it gets that huge amount of confidence in the client that they're watching the market, and they are watching the market. The other one is use the stats to create social media and engagement. We all use the examples of Facebook and Snapchat. I am over 50. I do not have a Snapchat or Instagram account. So I have to ask my kids how that all works. I'm joking. I'm not, though. I actually don't have a Snapchat or Instagram account. But there is an ambitious realtor out in Reno who posts the market review every month on Reddit. And he just makes a couple comments and he sits back and he lets the discussion happen. People ask specific questions and he says, send me a private message. Happy to get into details with you. So for very low effort, he is able to pull leads out of an environment that people haven't been able to get for and demonstrate his expertise. We have a couple clients who will take a dashboard and put it out into their email database. Hey guys, just wanted to give you a market update right here. Here's what's going on. You've seen me say good, better, best. In all of these situations, I very much believe the value you add is the commentary. If you go out and say, here's the dashboard, that's good. It's better than not doing it. If you go out and share a dashboard that says, hey, prices are up in the area again, that's a little better because you've interpreted it. But if you really want to demonstrate your expertise, put together just a couple sentences that says, hey, everyone, I was looking at the south part of town again. We're continually challenged by a low inventory market. You can see that still driving tight DOM. Buyers are having to write very high offers, and we're still expecting a very price competitive market. We're continuing to watch that inventory for any crack in the market. And you can feel how just a couple sentences like that is demonstrating that expertise again. So our goal is to give you those tools to do it. This works with active clients on buyers and sellers. Take this information with you to open houses. Look at the different ways you can do stats. Inventory is the #1 thing right now. We know that inventory drives price, but people just care about price. Submarkets, and I'm going quickly here because I know I got to let you guys go. Submarkets, if you live in an area, your land listings are not your city listings, are not your rural listings. Tailor that communication. And the numbers describe the market. I'm a nerd. I embrace my nerddom. I want you guys to embrace your realtorness and use us to help you do that. So again, my big takeaways: tell a story about the market, communicate it, make it specific to your client's situation, and make it accurate and timely. So just bring that information in when it's still relevant. We have 5 minutes left. I know I've been talking like an auctioneer this whole time. I'm going to turn off my screen sharing so that I can wave to everyone here. Thank you so much for the hour, everyone. I really appreciate the time. I saw that this recording was made available. So the MLS has a recording. I will get MLS copies of this presentation. Oh, I skipped over it. There is a knowledge base and user training. If you go to the dashboard and double click on the owl, he will bring you to a knowledge base. The promise I make everyone use it. Please go into the dashboards, click around, look around, play with it. You can't hurt anything, and go have fun with it. If you have any questions, please let us know. The knowledge base will be if you double click on the owl in the portal page, or if you open up the filter panel in weekly, monthly, and pricing, there's a little question mark. Double click that and it'll pull you right out to the knowledge base. I'm watching the chat bar if anybody has any last minute questions. Route questions over to MLS. They have access to us and we will make sure we get your questions answered.
Ed, thank you so much. I appreciate this.
You bet. Love you guys.
Best. And we may want to book you in later in the year if I can catch you for another hour sometime.
Absolutely. We will compare calendars and do it again.
That sounds like a plan. And for any of you that want to hang around on the video, please do, because Amanda will walk you through just how you find us, because this program is locked down. It's only for our High Country Association members. You could be an MLS only and you're not getting access to this program. So it's a benefit of our association. So she'll show you. We try to make it as easy as possible. Please give my best to Amy and thank you so much.
I will. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for the hour.
Okay, hey, this is Amanda Bevins, Membership Director, and I'll show you. I'm going to share my screen. Hold on. Okay. All right, so there are multiple ways that you can get in. So the easiest way is going to your Clarity dashboard, and then you can open it up by the Info Hub icon. All right, so here's the beginning part, the main screen of your Info Hub. Now you go to Resources right here, and then HCAR Stats, and click this button. And then here is the Domus Analytics page with everything all about High Country Association and MLS. There is also another icon, HCAR Stats. You can click on that. And once you log in the first time, and you're going to use your MLS username and password, and you're going to click on it to say log in with Clarity. And it'll ask you to put your username and password in again. And then you'll never have to log back into it. It will automatically populate every time you hit one of those icons. So I'm going to stop sharing. And thank you for everyone showing up today. And any issue or any question you have to ask, please, you can email me, Amanda at hcar.realtor, or you can email Shannon or Cheryl. It's all our first names plus at hcar.realtor. Thank you, and I hope you have a good rest of the afternoon.